You're watching Let the Quran Speak. Your magazine recently featured a photo of the surviving Sarnav brother from the Boston bombing. The magazine has been widely criticized for glamorizing the suspected terrorist, and some stores have even refused to put the issue on their shelves. Are we offering too much media attention and publicity to terrorists? Does the Rolling Stone magazine feature make terrorism seem attractive? Dr. Shabir Ali, president of the Islamic Information Center, is here to help us answer those questions. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
It's my pleasure to be on.
Now, it's interesting because the Rolling Stone magazine includes a very extensive article about the Sarnav brother. But what we hear a lot about is about the front page, the image. We do live in a society that's very obsessed with images and with the visual rather than the written. Maybe you can comment on that first, because that's what's getting a lot of the attention.
Yes, the attention it comes in this way because normally what is featured on the front page of Rolling Stone magazine is the image of a rock star. Mm-hmm. So naturally the first impression is that here is another star of sorts. What sort of star is this? An attractive young man featured on the cover like this, and then he turns out to be one of the suspected Boston bombers. Mm-hmm. So that gives some cause for concern. The article itself, however, as Anthony Lemieux has pointed out in his article on Psychology Today, the article itself is well written, it's carefully researched, and it deserves a wide readership.
Mm-hmm. Now, the message, what is the message of the article? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
The article basically deals with a lot of interviews. The writer Janet Reitman had talked to a lot of people who were close associates or friends or teachers, well. Yes, mm-hmm. Of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, otherwise known as Jahar to his friends. She reports in detail what they said about their relationship with this young man and what they understood to be his motivations and so on. Unfortunately, the article repeats the language of the youth as they have said things, with all of the foul words and so on. Perhaps this is the nature of this magazine. It's the first article of this magazine that I have read, and mm-hmm. I was shocked by the obscenities that are there in the article. But other than this, the article also has reported some opinions of counterterrorism experts, though this is sprinkled in between. What I find impressive about the article is that many of the theories that advanced therein about how a person becomes radicalized mm-hmm. fits with some of my own theories about how this happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I understood from the article is that the older brother had, a political and religious motivation. He felt that he was fighting for a just cause, but the younger brother, who was featured in this article, is kind of an unknown. He was a rebel without a cause. He didn't really have a cause. He was just, it's not really clear if he was just following his brother. He was just in the wrong company. It's not really clear why he did what he did. And by all accounts, he was a well-adjusted individual, popular, doing well in school, fitting into society. But at the same time, he is a suspected terrorist.
The article does try to make this connection and does try to show that the older brother was a very strong influence, not only in the life of Jahar, but also in the family itself, mm-hmm. And so too the mother. According to this article, based on the interviews with friends and acquaintances and so on, the family had moved from Chechnya to the United States of America. The father worked as a mechanic for a while, the mother as a hairdresser or something of this nature, until she herself started to become quite religious. Mm-hmm. Apparently there was a teacher coming to teach at the house. To teach Islam to some family members. the mother took these teachings very seriously. So too did Tamerlan, the older of the two brothers. And Tamerlan had a very strong influence in the family, and the mother also being very strict with the new religious learning. Eventually lost her job, where she refused to take care of male clients. Eventually she set up a service in her own home, providing similar type of beautification. But her religiosity, according to this article, led to the severance of her relationship with her husband. He moved back to Dagestan, I understand, and eventually she herself was charged with shoplifting, but she skipped bail and went back, and she eventually rejoined her husband.
Yes.
Now, this left Tamerlan, the older brother, in a position of great authority within among his siblings, and of very strong command over Jahar as well. And Jahar's friends would report that Jahar actually not only revered him and was overawed with him, but to a certain degree also feared him.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it was this older brother that influenced the younger to commit the act of terrorism?
Well, I don't have inside knowledge about the affairs to make my own judgment about this, but the Rolling Stone article does draw this connection out. Yes, loud and clear. That the Tamerlan was, to a large extent, following along with his brother, and his brother, from what we know about Jahar Tamerlan. From what we know about Jahar Tsarnaev, he was a pot smoker, and also, according to this article, and he was also selling the stuff. So at any one point, he would open his fridge and he would have a bowl of the stuff. I don't know how the stuff comes, but this is what I recall from the article. So his religiosity must have come trailing behind that of his older brother, Tamerlan, who is known for having radical ideas. It is reported that twice he disrupted the services in a local mosque, where on one occasion Martin Luther King Jr. was being praised, and Tamerlan, the older of the two brothers,
he spoke out.
He spoke against this. He thought that this is sacrilegious. How could you be praising a non-Muslim in a Muslim mosque? And on another such occasion, he found that what the Muslim preacher was saying was contrary to Tamerlan's own ideas about what Islam is, his radical ideas of Islam.
So there is a religious factor, but it seems like there were other factors as well that led to terrorism, according to this Rolling Stone magazine article.
Yes, and again we see the effect more so in the case of Tamerlan, the older brother, who seemed to have been the driving force in this whole operation. He had, because of his religiosity, he had forfeited his career as a boxer, because he felt that it would be wrong as a Muslim to hit the face of another human being. But having then discontinued his education and now dropped his boxing career, he eventually was reduced to a stay-at-home dad with his wife, a healthcare provider, working overtime to provide for the family. Eventually they would have to make do with stipends from the government, and but these subsidies were reduced one after another until in February of this year the housing subsidy was cut. And that seems to have been the decisive moment that triggered a sort of reaction.
So a personal frustration.
A personal sort of frustration. So this adds to everything else. The sense that There is a need for Muslims to have freedom and to be able to govern their own affairs. The sense that other powers are making it impossible for Muslims to have this freedom and self-determination. And in the case of this individual now, his own frustrations as a person, and the sense then, or the idea of looking for an explanation is how one expert has put it, that there needs to be a sort of self-vindication. I'm okay, the system is bad, and what do we do about the system? We try to fix it. How? By some desperate means. And so it's all of these factors put together that results in what we see now. Now, this does not mean that these factors in another individual will lead to the same result. Many other individuals in similar circumstances will still remain peaceful, and of course would not hurt a fly, because again they have other factors at play which keep them away from such violence. But when we recognize these factors coming together in an individual, I think it is reasonable for us to wonder if that would lead to a similar sort of result. So we need to stem these difficulties in people's lives or ideologies before they result in such harm to other individuals.
How do we do that?
Well, in terms of the economic aspect and so on, this is something that governments need to look into, create jobs for young individuals, create hope for them so that they do not fall into desperation and then resort to desperate means, and so on. In terms of the ideology, it is important for Muslim preachers, teachers, and imams, community leaders on the whole, to make sure that the ideology that is being taught to our youth are such that will not feed into this sort of radicalization of the youth. So ideas that may be popular in some Muslim circles and were popular at one time need to be again scrutinized now and weeded out. Ways in which we pray, for example. Often some traditional prayers will speak a lot about enemies, and that just reinforces into the minds of the youth that it's us versus some enemies, and sometimes the enemies are not known exactly, and the youth will have to sort of figure out for themselves who exactly are our enemies that we're always praying against. So things like this need to be looked at very carefully. One cannot sit back and say that Islam has nothing to do with it. One has to look at what could possibly be there in Islam that we took to be harmless, but the youth are possibly using as fuel for radical ideologies that they will eventually act upon.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the media attention towards terrorism, because what we saw with the Johar brothers is that there was intense media scrutiny, and there was play-by-play of every single incident that was occurring. The police chase, as the police were apprehending the suspects, everything was play-by-play, and it was going out into the media, and people were reading about it as it was happening. And now we see this Rolling Stone article with this beautiful young man featured on the front. So the question is, are we making terrorism seem really exciting and attractive and appealing to people?
This is one of the concerns raised in the Psychology Today article dealing with this. The point being that one of the goals of the terrorists is to get media attention and publicity. They want their grievances known and heard far and wide. And if they're glorified in the process, then this just feeds into the ego of the terrorist. And in fact, it is now mentioned that the Tsarnaev brothers were inspired by some radical Muslim sites, and a site in particular that hosts the Inspire magazine. and as a
Which
after
is an
following
Al
this,
Qaeda magazine.
or something like this, featuring articles by Anwar al-Awlaki, for example. And one of the articles was entitled "How to Make a Bomb in the Kitchen of Your Mom," and apparently the similar instructions that were found there would be the instructions that the sort of things that the bombs that they used apparently were similar to the ones described in that in that article, and it is that very website that posted a picture of the Tamerlan, the older brother, and began to praise him. So before long, they will probably pick up on this picture of the handsome Jahar as well. Although this picture had appeared elsewhere prior to this, the Rolling Stone cover just glamorizes it much more. But of course, this is what people do to sell magazines and newspapers and so on. And Rolling Stone has definitely profited from this.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we will answer questions we receive from you, our viewers.